right, so just in EMEA for our mWeb programs. So it's great to be here because this is a really big deal. We're doing a world exclusive just for you and everyone else that we're going to blog it to after this talk, because we're releasing a website for you guys. And for the next half an hour, next 30 minutes, we're going to be talking to you about why we did this and what we actually did, and then we'll talk to you a bit about what you're going to get in that website. So we've got like loads of people here at Google, loads of specialists in different countries that go out and they help our advertising clients and our publishing clients to make their sites better for their users. And this is a free service that we provide to a lot of our clients because we want the web to be better. We want those experiences to be better for our users. And we notice, though, there's lots of patterns that tend to come out when we talk to companies and when we do research on the companies and things like that. And what we find is that an awful lot of companies don't know how to judge the quality of their own websites. And so an awful lot of companies think they're really good. And an awful lot of the time, they're not. And an awful lot of the time, they assume that people don't buy things from them on the mobile because they don't want to buy things on mobile, and not because maybe their experiences could be better. And then when we talk to these companies and we give them ideas for things they can do to make their websites better, then often the question we get asked is, well, what does good look like? And we thought, that's a great question. We should probably try to answer that. What does good look like? And so that was the thinking behind doing some research. And what we did is we thought, wouldn't it be great if we did a benchmark? And if we went out and we actually assessed loads and loads of websites, and we built a benchmark for people. And so what we did is we used SimilarWeb to identify the most trafficked websites in, it ended up being 30 countries around the world, in Europe, the Middle East, Africa, Asia, Australia, quite a lot of 30 countries. And we worked with a company called CX Partners, which is a usability consultancy. We put it out to tender. They won the tender. They had the best way of approaching what we wanted to do. And we worked with them with our knowledge and their knowledge to build out this set of best practices for sites. We did it first in 2016, then we did it again in 2018 with all we learned from 2016. We specifically focused around finance, travel, and retail. And then our colleagues in Asia Pacific took what we did in EMEA and they ran it in Asia Pacific working with Accenture Interactive. So there was 3 verticals, retail, finance, and travel. We looked at more than 1,100 websites in all. All of these sites were assessed by individuals who were specialists in usability. And they were all locally sitting in whatever was the country where they were doing the assessments, so that they would understand if there were any cultural norms or anything local that we should be expecting and dealing with. We looked at 5 different usability areas. You can read all about this on the website that we're giving you, so I won't go into too much detail now. But there were more than 120 best practices, and there were some of these overlapped across retail, finance, and travel, or some of them were very specific to each of them. And each site, we did 14 speed tests for them, and those 14 speed tests were done twice a day at different times of the day across 7 days of the week, and then the median score was the score that we used, and like I said, across those 30 countries. So why build a website? Because what we did was when we were finished all of this is we went to those brands, if we had a relation with them, and we gave them a report, and we said, this is how you do on the benchmark, and we released the top sites out onto the press and stuff. This is how you do in the benchmark, and this is what you can do to make your site better. Cool, job done. But we were sitting on a wealth of data that we thought, well, why just share that with the most trafficked sites in the world? Because the most traffic doesn't necessarily mean all the best sites. And why would we just share it with those sites when we could share it with lots of other people? So we decided that we would actually build a website so that we could share with UX researchers, product owners, designers, developers, executives in all these companies who cared to know all of the things that we discovered in doing this research. Now, this is a bit of a meta site because you can't release a site about being fast and usable and have a site that's not very usable and not very fast. And so we had to build a super fast, super usable site in order to share all of these things with you. We hired an agency called Phantom that's based in London, and we worked with them to build this website. And what we want to do is share with you what their experience was in actually building a fast and usable site about fast and usable sites. So in a meta presentation kind of way, they're going to actually go through what they actually built and how. And basically, we want them to walk you through what we put them through in building this website. And so without any further ado, I'd love to put a warm welcome together for the Managing Director of Phantom, Emily Shorvon.
Awesome. Thank you, Shane. Cool. So, well, Google gave us, obviously, and presented to us a lot of amazing data, but data for users that had different motivations. And what we needed to do was create a super simple, super efficient way of presenting that would satisfy their needs. On top of this, we had to pass every single best practice that was included in the study, assuming it was relevant to us. So awesome. Challenge, we love it. That sounds great. But to tackle this, really, we needed to take all the complexity on our side and deal with it on our side. And that meant, in this case, hundreds and hundreds of pages of content. And the user experience needed to still be simple and efficient. So to quote a really famous guy that once ran Apple, great design is invisible. And that was very much the case on this project here. Purposefully, we actually ended up spending a lot longer on the UX and design portion of the project than build, which is somewhat rare, but it was really important. And for us, it was a massive testament, not just to our commitment, but absolutely our clients' commitment to getting the user experience right. And that for us was very important and a really exciting project to work on. So how did we do that? How did we get this right? We worked with Google to identify target audiences that would visit the site. And the way that we did do that was to develop sort of user motivations that would then dictate both the informational architecture, the content within every single page of the site. So we built personas that were revolved around motivation rather than groups demographics, which was really important for this. We thought a lot about who are these users, why are they here, how do we get them there to where they need to be as quickly as possible without adding new questions. So hopefully when you visit the site, you'll never be able to tell how complex it is in the background, and I think that is absolutely our goal with this. We hope it's really easy for you to use, and we're looking forward to you using it. So our target audience were very much people like yourself. We're talking product owners, UX researchers, designers, C-level decision makers. We needed to test our designs on you, and that we did. So we created an envisioned prototype in a lot of detail for the site, and the Google team actually brought it right here to the last Conversions at Google event in November. And they had all types of focus groups, sort of user testing sessions with attendees that we're super grateful for. But the thing that we took from that is, yeah, there was a lot of positive feedback, but there was also some feedback that we took back and readdressed the design. Even though it was pretty close to being signed off, we wanted to look at it again, and we weren't afraid to keep iterating. And I think that's what was something so exciting and successful about this project, that we had that sort of ability to just keep iterating and making sure it was the best possible user experience for everybody. I think one thing for us, especially working in an agency, is there's often a tendency to sort of rush onto design and build. And the whole point of that is it's totally understandable. Everyone wants to see something there and something you can use and ready to go. But I think the time spent in UX, especially on a project of this type, was so important to the success of the project. Cool. So we were ready to kick off development, and we put together a really in-depth, detailed technical design doc for the build, completely in Angular, which is a JavaScript library, JavaScript framework, sorry. For us, that's an obvious choice. We want to make a fully interactive, engaging sort of website. That's an obvious approach for us. But that's right when Google sort of informed us that, okay, cool, we're wanting to hit all kinds of goals in terms of best practice in every way, shape, and form. So we will need the site to be super fast as well. Enter AMP. So Google wanted the site to be built completely in AMP, utilizing a progressive web app. I'll be honest, we hadn't entirely considered AMP as a sort of plausible solution to this up until this point. Like a lot of agencies and technical teams, we'd looked at AMP a few years ago, and we'd sort of seen at the time that, you know, maybe it was a little too basic for a majority of the sort of very interactive sites that we like to build. But Google insisted. So what was important is we went and dove straight into researching what was possible in AMP today. And I've got to say, we were so pleasantly surprised. It has evolved a lot since those first moments we first looked at it. Here we have a whole heap of components ready to go that do almost everything that we would need to do in our sort of role developing a website. The really key thing about this, and an interesting challenge that was added onto this, even when this was sort of added to the mix, was that we were not prepared on either side to change our designs and change the UX. We wanted to create the exact same experience that we were planning for an Angular build in AMP, and we were willing to make sure that we wouldn't overly compromise on design for this. We wanted a fully interactive site. Now, building an AMP definitely does mean constraints, and the big elephant in the room is that there is absolutely no JavaScript allowed on AMP. Yep, so from a technical team perspective, that's sort of alarming at first, because we're really used to using JavaScript and its sort of infinite ability, infinite sort of possibilities. But what that really involved for us was taking in a new way of thinking and a new way of sort of approaching it, and also doing a little research into understanding a new framework. And I guess as designers and developers, the really cool thing that came out of this is these constraints made us think really, really long and hard about what a user actually needs to see and what a user actually needs to experience, so we could use these constraints to our favor. And the honest thing is, in 9 cases out of 10, the restrictiveness of AMP actually really helped us create a better user experience, which I'll talk a little bit more about. So, for example, and this is a very specific example, because when I do use these, there were very few that we came across. But we had some really nice statistics in here, and from a design perspective, we had them zooming in with all kinds of animations coming in, looking really cool when you hit the page. And we could actually do that with AMP and with an AMP component, and that was, we could have left it there. But what we actually realized, you scroll down the page, scroll back up, and with this particular component, it would just keep reanimating. It was kind of an irritating user experience. It looked cool at first, but kind of irritating once you're actually getting involved in the content. So yeah, we killed it, and we killed it really, really fast, and we just moved on. So in fact, these constraints turned out to be one of the main reasons why we actually really enjoyed working in AMP. But I'll get back to that a little more later. Yeah, so building an AMP, I think building in a complex interactive site in a framework that was designed with restrictions for good reason, like we can all admit that would be somewhat of a challenge at first. So we really needed to change our mindset away from building in JavaScript, which it feels like it has like infinite approaches to how you can do things, infinite sort of solutions, which might in theory sound like a good thing. Actually, for better or for worse, that actually adds complexity to when we build something. So our initial concern that it was going to take too long to get used to the framework, and that was going to be too restrictive once we did. So what we did was we invested a lot of time up front in usability and design, just to make sure we covered all those bases. But also that meant there was extra pressure when it came to development time, which no one loves to hear, and we needed to gain that time back. So there was a little nervousness around that, especially in a new framework. But we really spent time researching that framework and rethinking our development approach and identify and plan out the components we'd need. So the constraints really, really did help us to think more creatively about how we would do this build up front. Cool. And one really great thing about AMP and the community that exists there already is there's a lot of existing documentation which is really clear and easy to get hold of. So things such as AMP by example and GitHub provided some really, really great examples that actually helped us solve some issues and solutions and hurdles we wanted to get across while we were in that sort of learning curve for the new framework. So we familiarized ourselves really, really, really well with it. AMP is just a single framework that only works with its own components. So we soon learned that the seeming constraint was an advantage for the framework because it simplified decisions, which is fantastic. The component library is actually really, really, really vast and covers pretty much every situation. And the great thing is each one of those components is well tested and robust, so there's no risk of that. And also everything is mobile friendly straight off the bat, but also completely accessible. And we know, all of us here know how important that is. And sometimes that can be a little bit of an afterthought. So it's great that that's already baked in. But most of all, there was no junk. So there's no sort of junk aspects of it. We don't have to rifle through things. Being component-based, all those sort of solutions were really straightforward, which actually made development considerably faster as well. There was so much less back and forth about how we would do things, and we could just decide on the best approach. And because there's not a million ways to do things, decisions were made so quickly, and we just moved on. And all in all, honestly, we managed to build this site. It's a big site, and we managed to build it in 3 months with a really compact team. This wasn't a huge engineering team. But you know, what I find really fascinating, really interesting when we were discussing it afterwards is when speaking to our development team, they actually estimated that this site, even with the learning curve, took them a third less to develop than a regular site using JavaScript would, which is crazy in what we do, which is super cool. But I think what also is interesting about that, that's including the learning curve. So if we take away that away for next time, and we've invested this time up front now, next time we actually estimate it will probably cut our development time in half. So I've talked a lot about the positives of using AMP, and that's because there are a huge amount of them. But was it perfect? And of course not, because no framework is. And we had one really specific challenge that I'll just talk about, but this goes to show how specific it was for it to be a challenge. Basically, the site we created, as you'll sort of explore, has a lot of drop-downs and a lot of data. There's up to 1,300 different data combinations that we needed to sort of account for, and there was an existing component for a drop-down that had an arrow. But because our sort of content differed and because our sort of lines were different sizes and all those sorts of things, that little arrow on that drop-down didn't quite act in the way we designed in every single case or every single scenario. And for us, we really wanted to make it that closer to our design. So it was really specific and something we felt was important because it was such a key component of our site. So we built our own solution to it, and it was that easy. It was a chance for one of our developers to think creatively about the components that existed. And the great thing is you will never need to build that yourself because we built it, tested it, submitted it to the component library, and it's now available for anybody to use. And really, that's one of the huge advantages of AMP is there is a really amazing community that already exists for it. It's all open source, and you know, even better, the more people that use it and contribute to it, the better and the better and fuller it will be for everybody else. Cool. So we learned quite a few lessons from building an AMP, and I thought I'd share some of the key ones for you guys today. A recommendation is definitely to do your homework. We spent a lot of time planning and researching the components we were going to use, and it was time well spent. It saved a lot of time in development. But also, we put a lot of effort into the back end, particularly in this project. It was a very data-heavy project. So there's a really heavy sort of back-end engine driving it. But that's because we really wanted this site to do all the heavy lifting for our users so that they didn't have to. And I really hope that's the experience you feel. Also, plan out your content, and this was a really big one for this project as well. So we built a CMS specifically designed for this case. And what we did when we did that is we really understood that this project wasn't just going to be the scope of the project as it sat in front of us, but we knew that it was going to need to be updated and built on in the future, and that's something we wanted to consider from day one. So we worked on a CMS that would be able to take any changes and updates in the future. So we really didn't take any shortcuts with that. We scrutinized all the content and data and really thought about it to selectively decide what we wanted to have in there. And this applied very much to content strategy as much as technology. So yeah, the CMS basically had to work with the back end, the content with the front end, and all had to be one harmonious sort of experience. So yeah, we've now set up processes and infrastructure that enable us to maintain, improve, and build on the experience in future with minimal effort and investment from our clients as well. But also, this is the real important one here, and that's to use the constraints as an advantage. that I must stress that there are still plenty of engaging, interactive aspects to the site, and we really, really didn't compromise with that. But what we didn't want to do, and what this brought us into the thinking of, is that we won't rely on non-value adding sort of like gimmicky things that didn't improve the user experience. Even if they looked kind of pretty or cool, they needed to add to the user experience. Naturally, those types of things tend to make things slower, and that's counterintuitive to what we were trying to do with this project. So we were able to find components that fit with all aspects of our design without having to make any design sacrifices, and they actually added to the UX experience. So the constraints we came across really helped us to think about usability and what would actually make a better user experience, and that was a really great experience for us as well. Cool. And as we've just heard about as well, we utilize progressive web app on this as well. And even though that wasn't something that in our initial brief that we had sort of planned on doing, it became really evident to us and all the goals we were trying to achieve, how much value that would add for us. So we're having best practice in mind. We implemented a service worker. And that functionality basically means that the visited content on the site would be cached, and through this we would achieve the fastest possible loading times for repeating visitors. And the implementation of this, like from our experience, was actually really, really straightforward. That came straight from our development team's mouths. And you know, because it was built with a specific AMP component called the AMP service worker. So yeah, by all sort of measured, that was a really smooth experience and something that our development team actually really enjoyed exploring and would like to continue exploring because there's a lot of capability there. But last but not least, ultimately, we tested our performance on Lighthouse, and that was the sort of end of our journey with this project. And overall, and here is the result. So we're incredibly proud that we surpassed every goal we were hoping to achieve with this website, and that's very much due to implementing AMP and a service worker on there. It wouldn't have been possible to achieve these type of results if we were to build it in Angular as we had originally sort of hoped to do. So it's a really big success story for us, and I've been really excited to share it with you. So actually, my team who worked on it here are at the front as well. Stand up, guys. So. So if you guys see them around after this and would like to ask them about their experience or any more specific questions about how that process went for them, please by all means do. I'm sure they'd be really happy to answer any questions. So yeah, thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. So that was great. Thank you so much, and thanks for sharing all of that detail. So I wanted to also share a little bit about what we learned also around the kind of secrets to having a great relationship with an agency if you need to work with an agency, or even with your own teams, if you need to work with your own teams when you're building these kinds of things. So the first thing is to know what you want. It's really helpful for everybody if you know what it is that you actually want your website to do. And if you don't know what you want, hire someone in to help you to know what you want. So hire a UX consultancy or something. It's really, really worth the investment up front to know that, because it's going to save you an awful lot of headaches later on. Also have very clear key performance indicators for what it is that this site has to do for you. And they should be SMART. Does anyone know what SMART means? Specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. And so we had to have good KPIs that you can hold to. Bad KPIs are things like this. Well, basically, we want to make more money. Or, you know, we want to sell more stuff and things like that. And those are bad KPIs because they're not specific enough, but also because for the project of actually building a website and things like that, or building pages or improving things that you're already doing, they're not specific enough, particularly when you're in a build, because you can't test that you're living up to those kinds of expectations. And so it's better to have very relevant expectations. So we had things like, we wanted to be able to load in less than 3 seconds on 3G slow. And we have to pass every single usability best practice that we asked everybody else to pass. And so these were the kinds of things that we were able to hold to. So that's really important. And then, of course, keep an eye on those KPIs always, the whole time. It's really good to have somebody who's constantly checking back and making sure that we're not betraying our own objectives as we build. What's great to have is a senior UX person or a badass junior UX person, but you want to have somebody there who's actually got the authority to say, whoa, 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 hold on a second, we're going off KPI here. We're allowing a technical build need to overrule a user need, and we need to be able to pull that back. You especially want someone who's able to address that most insidious of statements, but that's how we always do it. Okay, so we don't want that kind of stuff. We want to try and get beyond that. So they were things that we learned. So now let's just introduce you to what you're getting with the site. So you'll get the site itself. On your overview, we'll go through what we did, the research, all of that kind of thing, explanations of what it was that were there. We're sharing with you the top brands, because this is all about the great experiences. This is not a naming and shaming site. So you're not going to learn anything from us telling you who does it bad. So what we're in fact doing is we're just focusing on all of the sites that we came across in our research that did it really well. Not all of them, because there's not space enough to go through everything and all of them. So we picked a number from all of them that we could share and that we had to go through all this kind of legal work with as well to get all of this true. So the top brands, what are the experiences, who does it really, really well? Oh, and I can tell you, all of the brands that actually topped this across our research in EMEA all agreed to show their best practices to you, so big thanks to them. We have a vertical page, so for each of the retail, travel, and finance verticals, there are vertical pages. In there, you can see all of the best practices that we actually assessed and the percentage of the sites that passed. And so you can see all of that. You can use these drop-downs in that to choose the usability areas that you want to look at, or every specific country as well. You can go in and look at as well and see how people did on that. Bug alert, we're aware of a bug. We said low technical debt, not no technical debt. So we are aware of a bug at the moment where if you use the drop-downs and you go into another page and come back, it forgets what you did in your drop-down, so we're working on that. Don't crucify us, please, we're working on it. We understand that when you launch a website, it's a living thing. And that you don't just launch it and go, thank God that's done for 5 years. So we've launched it, but we want to keep iterating and making it better, just as we imagine you all want to do too. So if you then decide you want to go into any of these, this is where the real gem is, the real beautiful content is for you, is you go into any of these and we actually explain to you what it was that we assessed and who did it well. With pictures, examples of the sites and descriptions of why it was done well, and the details of how you can test this yourself for your own site to see how are you doing this well as well. If we have case studies from, because we've obviously worked with lots of brands and all the rest, and if we have case studies from brands that have actually done testing and shared with us the results of those specific elements of the test associated with those best practices, we have included actually those case studies here for you to go to so that you can get the information that you need to go back and say, hey, we want budget to test this, or we need your sign off and stuff, we want to go back and test this. And please do keep in mind, all of this is about testing and not about just implementing. By the way, we don't have case studies for everything, but we'd love to have. So if you find that you use this and you do testing and you have actual stuff that we can verify that you really did do and that you want to build a case study with us, then we would love to hear from you. Help us to help you to help one another. And that's what we'd like to, and so to help everyone give each other the information they need to be able to actually build these great experiences for their users. And then, you can go in and see those. We have resources then where you can go and learn about, other things you can do, all of the tools and things like that you can use in order to go out and do more analysis, diagnosis, testing, and implementation, and the things that you can do on those as well. So that's all available to you as well. There we go. Big, massive thank you to these companies. These are all brands who did best-in-class examples of things and who very, very kindly allowed us to share those examples with all of you. So all of these brands, and we've tried as much as possible to cover as many countries as possible with examples, as many brands as possible, and as many types of businesses. So there's like online travel agents, and then multi-channel travel agencies, and hotel aggregators, and obviously then there's banks, there's insurance companies, there's financial aggregators, there's pure play retailers, and there's multi-channel retailers. And as much as possible, so people go, I can relate to this. And obviously nobody's perfect. Nobody got 100%. And maybe it's not even possible to get 100%, because if you're testing, there will be things that for your user you'll test, and they're not actually that applicable for you, and that's totally okay. But big thank you to all of these brands for allowing us to allow you to see what it is that they actually do well, to inspire you to make better experiences for your users. That's the site link. That's where you can go to all the phones are out. That's the site link. There's someone else peeking after us, so please pay attention. But everybody is here who's involved in all of this. We've been working on this for over 2 years, spent a lot of money on it actually. But everybody who's been involved in this is here. And so we heard the Phantom guys are here. Please do feel free in the break to talk to them if you've got technical questions or whatever about how they approach the site. We also have CX partners are here. CX partners are here. Stand up, please stand up. CX partner is here. And so again, we'll be here in the lunch break in case you want to talk to anyone about the study, and we'll be here as well. But we're very happy to talk to you and to answer all of your questions. Thank you. Thank you, Emily, for standing up. Thank you, Emily. Thank you, Emily. Thank you to the Phantom team. Thank you to CX Partners. Thank you to all of you out there who care about great experiences for your users and great performance on your websites and that for your users as well. Thank you to all those brands for everything that they've done. We really hope this site is useful for you. We've just told you it's really usable, so God, it better be. Do feel free to give us your feedback. Feel free to reach out to us if you want to work on case studies and things like that about testing that you're doing. Do share what you learn. Thank you all very much. Thank you.